Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marian Pagano. I am Chief Executive Officer of BlackHawk Data. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. This is our first Women in Tech for 2025. Thank you to everyone who made 2024 such a huge success, and our goal is to kind of continue that momentum in 2025. And also happy Women's History Month to everyone in the room and everyone watching. So we really appreciate everyone coming. Thanks again. We have a great audience here. We have a great viewership watching. Today's topic is going to be about the importance of allyship. And we have some great allies of mine on the stage with me today. So we're going to go around and kind of just quickly introduce everyone on the panel, kind of working their way down, starting with our very first male speaker at Women in Tech, Frank LaCangelo. No pressure.
Hi, everybody. Frank LaCangelo. I work with SentinelOne. Marian and I know each other from my time at Fortinet, where we did a lot of business together. Been at SentinelOne for about 3 years, running what we call state, local, higher education north, about 20 states. And been in tech since all the way back since 1995. Started in the reseller space. I think they still have an office pretty close by, Continental Resources, and have worked with various manufacturers since then.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bree Halamariam. I am an account executive at Cisco. I cover New York City and New Jersey higher education. I started at Cisco 2017, left for Salesforce in 2021, missed Cisco so much, I came back in 2023.
I love Cisco.
There we go. We compete against each other, but we still love each other. I met Marianne when she was just starting BlackHawk Data. I'm really excited to be here. I was with her when this started as a virtual panel while at Salesforce, and now I'm back for an in-live version of this.
That's awesome. I'm Jenna Tombolesi. I'm the Director of Engineering for Fortinet's public sector team in the Northeast. I currently lead 13 engineers across 7 states. I actually was at Fortinet when Frank was at Fortinet, so we worked together for a period of time, and it'll be 6 years for me in April. Marianne is a great partner of ours at Fortinet, but really separate from that, the stuff that she does for the community, it's something I'm really excited to be a part of. So thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate your time and you flying in from the other side of the world to be here. So let's talk about allyship, right? Let's talk about what allyship means to us individually, what it means to us in our career to be an ally for somebody else, right? So I'm going to kind of start. We'll just start this way first time around. Frank, you've been a great ally for some people in the room, myself especially. Let's talk a little bit about what it means to you.
Yeah, I have 2 sisters. There's 3 of us. So I've, always been in a, I guess, female-dominated sibling childhood. And both of my sisters were always very high achievers. So I was the oldest, but, literally my middle sister was, the #1 ranked tennis player in high school, the #1 academic student in a very large Philadelphia high school. So in terms of allyship from a support of women specifically standpoint really stems from my childhood and quite frankly, just, being a half a step behind both of them academically and athletically. And I mean, even today, my sister sells medical products and she earns club every year and is just fantastic at what she does. And yeah, just been around great women my whole life throughout high school, college. Actually, high school was a nice break because I went to an all-boys high school. The bar was, let's say, I felt like the bar was a little lower, but then they started to integrate boys and girls in the same class as senior year. So I was like, oh boy, here we go again, playing from behind. And, throughout college, had great experiences. I remember being the elected president of the Society for Human Resource Management. And I'll never forget, there was a woman that was the previous president named Diane the year before me. And she was fantastic. I was part of the club. And it's just like, man, I can't believe I've got to follow in Diane's footsteps. And, even our moderator, Professor Francis Gallagher, he's like, he called me Lucky back then. It was funny. A lot of people call me things like, Lucky, you got big shoes to fill. And we still wound up winning some awards. And I just got great stories. And, so many of my colleagues are in the audience. Janine Delaney and I have great work history together, and she taught me so much in my early days of tech. So I just really, from an early age, have always been around, high performing women, and quite frankly, had to feel like I had to, hustle to keep up with them.
Bree, how about you? I know we share some common, allies and people that have supported us in our career. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I come from the South, if you can hear my Southern accent, born and raised in Atlanta, but I started off at Cisco in the North Carolina offices. I was a virtual sales account manager, or what some other companies call an inside account manager. And when I was looking to transition from inside sales to outside sales at Cisco, I had a director by the name of Anthony Berlucci. He was from the Northeast. He was visiting the North Carolina offices. And I remember at the time, it was a little bit tough for people to switch from inside sales to outside sales, or actually people say it's still tough to do that now, but back in 2017, it was really tough. Anthony came to visit and he was meeting one-on-one with everyone. And when I spoke with him and kind of gave him my pitch, he said, you know what? I think you're ready now. He said, I don't think you need to wait. Here's the thing. I had never planned on waiting, but I just needed someone to sponsor me, someone to say, hey, Bree, I will rally behind you and get you to where you need to be. That was Anthony, who was at the director level. He told his regional managers, next time anyone who hires Bree, I strongly recommend you all to have her on your team, especially here in the Northeast. My boss, his name is Frank Antico. He actually hired me twice. He hired me when I moved up here to New York from North Carolina. I left, and then when I came back to Cisco, he rehired me again. And Mary Ann and I, we share that story of when she started her company. Frank was one of the few that would actually take your phone calls starting off as a woman. So when I think of allyship, I think of someone who's going to be there for me, someone who's going to advocate for me, someone who's going to empower me. And as a Black woman, I don't want you to just be my ally when it's popular, when corporate puts out initiatives to do so, or when we're part of these events, says, oh, let's rally around Bree. I want you to be there for me before it became popular. And that's why I'm so appreciative of my male allies, because this journey started before 2025 when no one was even talking about women in tech.
Well said. Very well said.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I mean, for me personally, I would argue that the last 3 roles that I've had, I was not the best candidate on paper. I was not even a likely candidate on paper. And it was the product of people advocating for me and putting my resume where maybe it didn't belong, that I've been able to now be here today. So for me, I think to kind of dovetail off what Bree was saying, I think advocacy and allyship go hand in hand. And I think a big piece of advocacy is being able to do it when that person may not be in the best position to advocate for themselves. And over time, that person hopefully does now feel empowered to be able to advocate for themselves in the future and continue that progression. And this could not be even specific to the workplace. I mean, advocacy and allyship take so many different forms in our daily life. But I think that's really what it's about, is being able to advocate for someone who might not be in the position to do it yet themselves, and eventually empower them to be able to start doing it for themselves in the future.
I think we too, as people, right? Frank Antico, obviously being, one for both of us, right? It's because I did for him and I helped him and I supported him and he supported me, that when I needed someone to stand up for me and I called him on the phone, he was more than happy to invite me into the Cisco office, my partner Jason and I, and talk to us and coach us. And still to this day, when I have questions, which are always many in abundance, he is always one to, to answer my question or guide me. As a female in tech, as a female CEO in tech, one of the very few, right? It was really hard to figure out who to go to, right? When the BlackHawk 11 started, it's 11 people who stood by me, pretty much mostly men. My partner Jason's here today, Dallas, Shahid. So there's a bunch of us still here today that, are still allies of mine, people that I can turn to when I need something. So I think that's really super important. And Bree, you touched upon the next question, which was what is not allyship, right? Because I think that's important, because I think people use it when it's important or use it when it benefits them, right? But I think allyship is more than that, right? It's when nobody's looking, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that to guide and coach people to how to be an ally when they need to be, not just when they have to be, right? So Jen, I'm going to go reverse. I want to put you on the spot.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I feel really, really passionate about this, about what allyship is not, almost more so than what it is, because I think a lot of times the initiatives surrounding allyship or diversity or even advocacy are getting to some arbitrary number. Where, okay, it has to be 50-50 men and women. It has to be 50-50, or we need more representation here. And sometimes it feels a little arbitrary, to your point, where you're just trying to kind of meet a quota. To me, I think allyship needs to enable people to be what they feel that they want to be. And they should be able to feel that they can do something. And for me, I think we've reached the goal if every single woman in this example can say, I want to be in STEM, I see myself in STEM, I don't see any roadblocks that are there, right? I see myself able to do that. That to me is the win. The win is not the number. The win is everyone feeling empowered to be able to do what they want to do. And if it's not tech, if it's something else, then they should feel empowered to do that also. So I think sometimes when we put a metric on something, it really kind of defeats the purpose of the goal and what we're trying to do.
I agree that is something when I'm thinking about that question, I'm going to let you all know I'm not politically correct at all. So I'm just going to keep
Welcome
it
to the club.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it honest. Allyship is not tokenism. I don't want to be your successful Black woman friend that you want to continue to propel because it's easy to propel me. I tell this story to a lot of people. Is you get my resume, you see my name, Bree Halamariam. My last name, I actually changed it. I used to be Bree Jordan, but I took on my husband's last name, which is of Ethiopian origin. And when you see me, you see a Black woman with connections to international life. And you say, is it easy to propel Bree? Well, yes, it is. I graduated from Duke. I worked at Cisco. I worked at Salesforce. If anything, I tell people I'd probably be a CEO if I weren't a Black woman because I wouldn't have to wear that prejudice around me. Allyship is not tokenism, taking that perfect Black woman, that perfect minority, and continuing to promote the same one. Allyship is looking at everyone in the room, everyone's skills and attributes, and getting behind them. Another thing I tell people, and forgive me, I know this is recorded, I don't want to be your Condoleezza Rice. I don't want to be that same Black woman that you go send to meet with the white men to promote your agenda. I'm not Ruby Bridges. I'm not here to integrate anything. Don't make me your token. That's allyship.
I mean, Bree, you stand, you stand strong on your own, right? I respect you, and I always have since we've met, because of what you do and what you bring to the table and your work ethic and everything else, right? So I could be an ally for you just simply because of what you are and who you are. It has nothing to be of what you look like, and it should be that, right? And men need allies, women need allies. It doesn't matter, right? When I talk on the phone with women who are looking for mentorships or anything like that, I don't look at, I look at, okay, what do you bring to the table? What are you looking to accomplish? And I'll mentor anybody. As long as you're willing to do the work and put the work in, it shouldn't matter. You could be an ally for anyone. And those allies become, I always preach about building your network, right? Building your brand. That's how you build your brand. You don't build your brand on what you look like and who you are and what nationality you are, where you come from. You build your brand on you, right? Frank, what are your thoughts on just in general in terms of allyship? And I know I forgot the question, but you totally threw me off.
What is not allyship?
That was the question.
Allyship.
You totally threw me off.
Yeah, allyship is not checking the box. It's not getting on your, your corporate broadcast at, at Sentinel One. We do, appreciate diverse culture and holidays and things of that nature. And, Women's History Month is March, and there's several things that we do throughout the month, in person and online. And it's not just jumping on the Zoom and, checking your phone the whole time. It's being engaged in the conversation, understanding the importance of it, and doing your part to understand why allyship, why a diverse team is important for all the right reasons. It's, a lot of times I don't even think of it as allyship, we're building a diverse team. I think of it in terms of building the most productive team that I can go to market with. And if my team doesn't bring different ideas and different backgrounds, it tends to lead to you not pushing yourselves and kind of doing things the same old way. So, I really think of it as building optimal teams. And coincidentally, my definition of optimal teams are putting teams together that look different, that come from different backgrounds, but are all massively qualified. So, when we all look the same, Jenna and I were talking about this earlier with a recent hire, the build of my team, I really knew that the feel was a little off balance in terms of male centric. And I try not to ignore great male resumes because I don't want to turn anybody down, but it's just a feeling that you have on what that team needs to be great. And I knew that hire, inside needed to be a woman. It worked out great. So it kind of happens naturally in terms of the way I like to build an optimally performing team.
Well, I think that's it too. When you look at examples of allyship, so people understand what we're talking about, it's just that, right? It's building a team based upon, the right people, right? And being, it goes back to, again, the same thing, building your brand and being strong, right? When Frank Antico recently needed somebody for a customer, yeah, he owes me because that didn't work out. But, he wanted someone strong enough for a customer that was unhappy, but he sang my praises. He stood behind me, and I didn't even get to introduce myself on the call because he actually did the intro for me. And that's really being an ally, because he stood up for me. He brought me into something, and he spoke highly of me. And that means a lot to someone. You've done it a million times, Marie. Right? When I started working with Fortinet on the slug side, we spent a lot of time together. I have the CDW team here, allies for me. Every time they talk about me or they reference me, I mean, it's super important.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, those are examples of when allyship became super important to me building a business. I mean, has there been specific examples, Jenna, when allyship for you has really kind of taken center stage and really kind of helped you out in a specific situation?
Oh, I have countless examples. Countless. I mean,
Hit me.
I'll spare you because we could be here all day. But I mean, even just, I started as a systems engineer at Fortinet, and a lot of people, including the customers, were unfamiliar with that. Nobody had really ever seen that. So I'd walk into a meeting with who my account executive was, and they would reach out and shake his hand and say, "So you're the engineer?" And it's like, haha, no, really. Nobody thinks that actually happens. It happened to me countless times. Or what do you do? Marketing? That was my favorite one. How are you here to pay the bill? And ultimately, sometimes people would even continue to speak to him and continue to ask him the technical questions, and he would keep going like this. And some people, and sometimes it's not always based in malice, but they just are not expecting it yet, right? And I think we have made some progress in the past, 5 to 10 years, but at the time it was completely unusual to see a female engineer. So even he had to sort of learn to be an ally almost every single interaction, unfortunately, because no one was expecting that dynamic between the two of us. And I had to sit him down once and say, listen, I gotta be honest, like, you cannot question me in front of a customer. You just can't. If I answer the question, that means I know what I'm talking about. If I tell you I don't know, that means I'll look it up. But if you create any sense of doubt, my credibility is already kind of here by default, right? So if you introduce more of that, it's going to be 10 times harder for me to do my job. So some of it was just an awareness thing, right? So that was kind of one of the earlier examples. And then obviously moving into this role, I had an internal advocate who was pretty high in the company, who said, listen, I'll advocate for you until it becomes weird, right? I'm not gonna make it weird for everyone and say you must hire this person, right? But even some of the little things, he was actually helping me review my presentation before I presented it to the other higher ups when I was interviewing. And that level of detail on some of the things that he had me change, I would have never thought of. So without him, and even still to this day, there's just so many people in the organization that have advocated for me and been an ally through a lot of uncomfortable and uncertain times. And ironically, all of them have been men thus far. So it's really been a great experience. Honestly, I've worked with a great team, but I would have had so many other challenges that I might not have been able to overcome to get here if I didn't have the support of those people.
So, Bri, I know you had a few examples before. Anything else come to mind that you can share with those that are watching and in the audience?
Working in sales, a lot of times you are results driven And if the results don't necessarily show, things start to get questioned. And we all know that. So I just want to thank any of my customers who happen to be watching this for being for being allies. A few examples that come to mind. One customer recently, Cisco acquired Splunk, and Splunk was setting up an intro call to my customer. And the Splunk team had me on the background. They said, oh, by the way, here's your Cisco rep Bree. That kind of said it, just quick introduction. And the customer said, oh, I know Bree and Jose, her engineer. We're best friends. We talk and meet all the time. That was good to hear something reassuring such as that. Another customer, I remember one time I had him meet virtually with my new director. And I asked the customer, and I didn't prep him on this. I said, is there anything that we could be doing differently with you and your account, with your client base? And he said, Bree, I don't know how to answer that question because everything's been going great. I said, wow, he would have thought I paid him $10,000 to say that from my boss and my boss's boss. He said that. That to me is allyship, speaking of someone highly in which someone may not normally do that or think of that person in that same way. Just send a note, talk to someone's boss. You can be a sponsor. Even if you aren't directly writing the checks for a person, you can still be a sponsor. It takes nothing to call Marianne's CFO and say, hey, Marianne's doing a great job. She might not be balancing the checks, but the checks are going to be coming in 3 months.
That's actually a good point, right? Because I never thought of it that way, right? If you look at customers, right, they can still be allies of ours. We could be allies of theirs, right? I think of it when I think of the channel, right? You have the manufacturers as distributors, right? We just did a channel panel, Janine and I, right? You have business partners, right? CDW and us. We can be allies of each other. It doesn't have to be just, manufacturing VAR. It's across the channel. Frank, what about you? Anything specific stand out, whether someone was an ally for you or where you were an ally for someone that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, specific to women in technology, some things that I like to do is when I see somebody that's really high performing in a role that might not pay as much as like an AE role, for example. Perhaps somebody's in alliances or somebody's in support renewals. But you see that individual has that massive skill set. And it's like, wait a second, doesn't anyone else in the room know that this person is in the wrong seat on the bus? So, and there's nothing wrong with doing different jobs. I mean, anytime anybody wants to do anything in their career, I applaud them. And if you want to make money, that's great. If you don't, you want to, save the world in some other way, like all power. But if you do want to make money and you do want to know what people are doing in the company that are doing extremely well, and if you define that as income, something specific that I do really with a lot of times with our business development reps, and again, it doesn't really have as much to do with man, woman, ethnic background, what have you. But recently it has been with women and just different alliance roles. And, I just say to them one off, you're great at your job. And I know your skill set can translate into being fantastic into, some of the high performers on my team. If you like what you're doing, thank you. And you're doing a great job. If you want to do something like this, I don't know if anyone's ever told you or not, but I've been doing this a long time and you'd be great at it. So, there's actually 2 women in the organization that I definitely, have my eye on in terms of promotion, because it doesn't stay secret long, and you're competing internally for resources as well. But
You want to steal them.
yeah, I always like everyone to know what's available to them. Hey, man, you're really good at what you do. Like, if you want to keep doing what you're doing, that's great. If you want to do this, half the time they say, you really think I can do it? I was like, I know you can do it. Let's work on it together.
Well, it makes me think of I was going to ask the question of anybody of privilege. When privilege, I mean, I'm privileged to have been able to build a business with my partner, Jason. I've been privileged to be able to have staff, customers, vendors, partnerships, right? How does someone like me who feels privileged and honored, right? I don't know if privilege is the right word, right? How do I pay it forward? How do I give back? How do I help someone else, right? Krista Malik's always famous for teaching me, it's not just your rise to the top alone, it's who are you bringing with you, right? And that's part of allyship. It's who are you bringing with you, right? And I think that's part of the reasons I joined things like the Women in Tech networks and Women of the Channel, because those give me opportunities to meet people I normally wouldn't get to meet, right? It gives me a chance to mentor and help develop other people, or just meet people and chat and just talk about different things that are on their mind. Listen, sometimes it turns from Mary a coaching session because Mary's having a bad moment. But sometimes I'm the one that gets coached. But I think stuff like that, I think it's important that if you're in a high level position and you want to be able to take somebody with you, right? Like Frank's done for you, like, Anthony Berlucci's done, right? Good people, right? That I've known a long time. How can they use that to help you, right? You're in a senior leadership position, right? Even as an account manager, you still have ways you can bring inside sales reps and different people along with you, right? So what advice do we have for people who want to be an ally, and what role that they have? How can they use that to lift other people up?
Are we going reverse?
Let's go this way. We can go this way. You go first. You can go first. Did you go last? Go first.
I would just say that that is the ability of everyone in this room, right? It's not the four of us up here. And what I hope people do more of, and I think most people do this, and if you don't, just like look at yourself in the mirror and figure out like what I can do to give back in some way, shape, or form, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're senior vice president of a company or you just started. Like there's always a way to give back, and I think I always had it. And maybe the older you get, the less selfish you are, and the more give back mind frame you get into. But I just think it's important to all of us, and it's just so easy to just get so busy in your own little world, in your own little phone, and just like look up once in a while, right? Like who's on my left, who's on my right. There's things that doesn't matter what level in the company you are. There's things that people bring to me every day. My business development manager, and I think if my senior vice president was sitting in the room, I think she would say, yeah, there's several things that Frank has brought to me and, made me better. So I'll really just say, look within yourself and do your best to give back in some way, shape, or form. And, we all have something to share, and, hopefully life's busy, man. Your world's busy. We all have problems, and, just get out of your own mind sometimes, or more than sometimes, often as you can, and give back.
I would say it doesn't have to be complicated like Nike. Just do it. Yeah. If you want to be an ally, put in the work. My two younger sisters both work at Microsoft. I told them to register for this event because it's on LinkedIn Live, a Microsoft platform. And one of them said, how did you become a part of this panel? And I said, Marianne called me. That's an ally right there. Hey, Bree, do this panel. I have another ally in the room, Aisha. She works at Cisco, and we were doing some ideas and brainstorming with a gentleman who reports to our SVP of America Sales. And Aisha said, Bree, come get in the office. I said, I really don't feel like coming to the office today. And Aisha said, no, we're going to go and have these conversations. We're an ally. You don't overthink it. You don't have to read all these books, go to the library, check out different podcasts, watch the news. You don't have to do any of that. Just put in the work.
I love it. Just do it. Because people do overcomplicate it. Yeah. And that's kind of like when I jump on mentorship sessions, it's not about, I don't overthink it. I don't even know why half the time I'm on the call. I just do it. Just get on the phone, talk, and build a rapport. It just has to come natural.
Yes. You have to want to do it. You have to want to be.
You have to want to do it too. Yeah.
Like Frank, I can tell it comes natural for you. Like I can feel your genuine, authentic energy. And that's what it really takes for allyship. If you're there just to check a box or you think it's going to get you in good with someone else, we can pick up on it. Just save me the time. If you genuinely want to do something, you'll do it.
True. Jenny, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think people overcomplicate it. I think they also underestimate their level of influence on a situation. And it could be as simple as redirecting, in my example, right? Redirecting someone that says, oh, you must be the engineer. Well, no, actually, Jen is the smartest person in the room, right? Which may or may not be true, but that holds a lot of weight in that situation. It could be speaking up when someone's being spoken over in a meeting. It could even be reaching out to them on the side, like Frank mentioned, just saying, I think you'd be great at this if you haven't considered it. Have you considered this? Those little interactions, I mean, there's so much that we can influence at whatever level we are. We don't have to be the SVP of a company. I mean, we could even be a peer, right? So definitely always understand the level of influence you have and the impact that you could potentially have on someone else at any given time, any given stage of your career. And also, I think we need to actively listen, because I've even missed some things, especially recently. I had one of my engineers say, you know, I'm looking for another role in the company, which I knew. And we're just not utilizing that person the right way, right? I mean, they're so much better than what they're doing. But they asked and said, what else can I be doing to get more exposure? And I was like, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I think of putting that person in a position to have better exposure and have more opportunity in the company, knowing that was something that was kind of on their trajectory? I've heard little nuggets and little things, and maybe we didn't sit down and have a full-blown conversation, but you know, just that active listening and saying, you know, how could I potentially influence this or help this person influence that outcome for themselves? But having to understand the outcome, obviously, is the first step. So those would be the two suggestions I would have.
Well, I think too, for people just starting out, right? Either they want to, people think they have to be an ally. How do you become an ally? How do you find an ally? I think it just happens naturally. I think you have to just want it. You have to want to be that. That goes back to being your true, authentic self. Right? I always tell everybody that's I'm kind of just me. I don't really change. My title changed, but I'm still just me. You know, and I don't think you need to be someone who's a SVP or a director or something like that to be an ally. Like you said, you could be just peers of each other. You can be an ally for someone above you. It doesn't really matter. It works in both directions. You know, I think it's an important part of just being workers and working together and coworkers and just business partners, you know, and stuff like that. Yep.
Just want to say, I really like the point of Jenna bringing up effective listening. And on the other side of the spectrum becomes effective communicating to ensure that you're listened to, because everybody's voice deserves to be heard. And I always like to put a pitch out there for a professional public speaking organization, Toastmasters International. It's a really great, internationally acclaimed organization that helps people of all abilities. You know, I don't run into too many incredible public speakers. I think it's a skill that everyone can get better at. And they do a good job of sharpening your listening skills as well. So I'm not currently active in that organization, but for a good 10, 11 years of my career, I religiously went to those meetings. And it's a great place to network. And, you know, again, diverse people, diverse backgrounds, you know, college students, retirees. It's a great organization. You know, getting back to Jenna's point of being an effective listener, but, you know, onus on you to be an effective communicator, then you'll be more apt to be listened to.
But I think the important part of that too is that for the first time ever, my partner Jason and I last week walked to a meeting with the CTO of a big public sector agency, and he was like, "I want all phones on the table," he said, "because I want to have a meeting, but I want everyone to listen to each other." And it was the first time I had seen someone do that. I mean, I wouldn't tell him to do that. I'm the vendor. But he did that. He put his phone down and he was like, because effective listening and communication is something that's really important to the dynamic of our partnership. And I thought that was pretty cool, because usually everyone's always like this and looking down and trying to figure out what's coming up next. And, you know, I think you can't build an allyship or a partnership with someone if they're not going to listen. You know, I forget more than I used to, but I still listen really well.
You heard it the first time, at least.
I did hear it the first time.
It didn't stick, but
no, it doesn't stick as much as it used to. So don't feel bad if you told me something I forgot. It doesn't stick as much as it used. My brain is very full. I didn't think it could be this full. But
We were just talking about that.
What, your brain gets just full? It does.
Something needs to go out for it to come in.
It does. I keep tilting my head, but nothing's falling out anymore. You know, it's one of the things we were talking about. I think we were talking about this in our December panel, actually. How rewarding it is to watch other people succeed. And I think that's a really big part of it, because you could be an ally, but really to watch someone succeed. I think it was one of my mentors that reached out to me as part of the Women of the Channel community, and she wanted to be mentored because she's new to the industry. She's in a solution provider role. And she had asked me about how do you be successful? Like, you're a CEO. It's like, well, yeah, 6 years ago, I was placing orders and doing quotes. How did you get where you are? And then I saw her at the Women of the Channel Awards banquet win a Newcomer of the Year award. And that was kind of a proud moment. Not that I probably did anything, but it was kind of cool to see someone who you've spoken to and you've met and you've had, listen, if you had a small impact on somebody's life and career, I think that's super important. And we talked about that a lot in December about if you can just affect one person by something that you do, it by default kind of makes you someone's ally, right? So I think it's important for us to stand by each other and guidance, advice. I mean, are there any organizations that you guys belong to that, besides the ones that I already have, that you've seen where mentorship opportunities are available for anybody? I know Women in the Channel has that. I know this Women in Tech Network has one. We have one.
I already plugged Toastmasters, but Toastmasters, they do that.
How much did they pay you for that plug?
The check didn't cash yet.
Not yet? Okay.
They were invaluable.
I'm a member in my sorority, and that's been really invaluable for me. I joined in college, and it's really stuck with me, not only because of the work that we do to give back and volunteer into the community, but also because it's other professional women from different backgrounds, and we can learn different communication styles, different leadership styles, things that I may not get exposed to since I work in a predominantly sales and corporate environment. I know sometimes people kind of let go of their, business sororities, fraternities after college, but if you can reconnect, I think that would be helpful. That's something I would advise anyone.
Well, I think one of the fun things that I went to Berkeley College, wasn't really a college back then, but it's Berkeley College now. It was a business school back then, and they asked me to come back and do a panel for students, and it was actually pretty encouraging because, sorry for the Gen Z millennials, but at least those still I can still mentor up, right? They were open to it. It was kind of fun because it was actually myself and the CEO of Jimmy Choo. And I was like, I'm done. They're not going to care about me at all. But it was like I wore flat shoes and sneakers. It was terrible. She had these beautiful Jimmy Choos on. But I think it was kind of funny because when they were talking and we were going through the panel, at the end, there's a line for me. I was like, oh, it has to be for the Jimmy Choo lady. But they really wanted to talk to just a regular business person, right? Because I think that it was encouraging to see how many people thought about starting a business or thought about being an owner, right? But didn't know what to do with themselves. How can we help in different ways coach the younger generation up, or at least those that are starting out, right? I went to the Cisco Women's event last year, and there was a lawyer there who wanted to get into technology. I'm not sure how she got into that one, but she was a lawyer who wanted to be into tech. So she had a friend at Cisco that brought her in. I think that's kind of cool when you can actually cross different industries. What kind of encouragement or advice do you think we can give people who are starting out, how to kind of find their place, how to build their brand, how to build their network, right? Because listen, without a brand and a network, I don't know where I would be. That's kind of what got me where I am. I mean, Jenna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think Women in Cyber, it's WESIS for short. I'm actually going there next week. It's in Dallas for their conference. I love that it brings so many different walks of life together that all have the same core interest in cyber. And to your point, we get a lot of students there. There's folks, I did a resume review for a single mom that said, I want to get back into the industry. I want to get back into tech. I've been out of the game for so long and I feel like I don't have any skills. And, myself as a hiring manager, I sat down and volunteered at all their resume review clinics throughout the week. And I was really surprised to hear some of those things, right? Like, there's so many skills that you kind of ran your own business, right? So what can we pull out that's transferable? So those type of experiences that I love to get a whole bunch of different people from all walks of life that just have the same common interest. They don't have a sort of like faction in Buffalo because I'm from somewhere, I guess, less cool, but I know they have one in Massachusetts. I know they have one in New York. They have kind of little subgroups. So definitely, join those if you're interested. And I completely agree about getting in at the school age because if we don't, folks have already sort of made their decision, right, on kind of what interests them and where they're going, and also put up their own walls about what they think they can do. And I did last year around this time in March, they did sort of a Women in Cyber Day at one of the colleges in Connecticut, and they asked me to speak. And I was just giving a rundown of the sort of demographic breakdown of my team. And I said, of the 12 men on my team, how many do you think are older than me? And they said, 1, 2, I don't know. All of them. And so when I said all of them, everyone kind of turned white. They couldn't believe that I was leading a team of not only mostly men, but men that I was sometimes significantly younger than. So kind of having all of the deck stacked against them. So to be able to see someone else that's in kind of a similar position that interests you, where you feel you may have those same roadblocks. I mean, that's huge. They might not be getting that message otherwise. And I know they're not, because they were completely shocked by the fact that that was the case, right? That someone like me could lead a team of men, older men at that. So that to me is the most rewarding, I think, is getting in at that level. You know, I would say somewhere between high school and college, you know, early college, maybe, if that. Those are the best ways that we can make an impact, in my opinion. So any organization or anything that I can do that kind of deals in those like career days and some of those other ideas, that's really where I like to be, because I think that has the most impact for the future generations.
And since we're using LinkedIn Live, I think it will be important to note that everyone should have an updated LinkedIn. And this is something that I coach a lot of Gen Z, people who are transitioning their careers, or even people who want to make a jump to a big company like Cisco. The first thing people do, they look up your LinkedIn. I have a peer who works in Washington, D.C. She went to a gala with Cisco executives, and she was advocating for many individuals to take their next step in their career. The first thing the executives asked, show me their LinkedIn. Let me see their picture. Who are they? Tell me about them. If you want to get into technology without a technical background, or even if you're starting off fresh in college, high school, you need to make sure that you're dressing up for the job that you want and you're showing up for the North Star. I had someone who recently just graduated from Duke, and I've been helping her with her, resume and LinkedIn. She said, hey, who wants to help me? I raised my hand. The first thing I said was, improve your LinkedIn, and here's all the things that I would do to make a difference to it. Let me see your resume. Here's all the things that I would do differently for it. People aren't always carrying those physical business cards anymore. They're carrying LinkedIn QR codes. And if they aren't carrying LinkedIn, they're asking, what's the person's Instagram? So even it has to go beyond just your professional social networking. You have to make sure your Instagram is good, your Facebook, your Twitter, now known as X.com, and
That's a whole nother webinar.
And also now what's becoming popular is WhatsApp. WhatsApp has now kind of become a place where, quite honestly, we have some conversations in business and some of the organizations I volunteer with on there. Once you have that together, I think it becomes an easier story. I recently had a Cisco Tech event in December, and I thought the gentleman was from my higher education institution that I call into, but no, he actually registered that. He works for the government, but he said, hey, Bree, I registered underneath my academic institution because I used to work in IT undergrad, and now I'm doing auditing, but I want to work for tech, and I didn't want the company to know what I was doing. He said, Bree, I looked you up. I read your blog, your LinkedIn. I want to make a transition from finance into tech. How do I do it? You have to have a social presence when you're talking to these people.
Yeah. Frank, any thoughts on you?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of input, advice, I always just say, be confident, be inquisitive, don't act like you know something that you don't know just to impress the person that you're talking to. Just keep it real and be honest. And what I also say is, I like the concept of doing really well in the job you're currently in. And that's the way you can build great advocacy. Sometimes we get too preoccupied with what's next without being great at what you do, because once you become great at what you do, you're going to be listened to more. Like, we all want to be heard. And the better you do in your existing job, I think, is the more likely you're going to be to get the next one. Earlier in my career, I was, probably too preoccupied with jumping levels and networking with this and that one, and it just doesn't work. So I like to be heard. I think we all like to be heard. So in terms of time frame, I always say, like, give it a good 2 years and be really good in what you're doing. Build advocacy, build a body of work, and build some mentorship, and let it happen naturally. Run the marathon.
So your host lost track of time. We were out of time. Any closing thoughts from the panel? I missed track time. Any final closing thoughts from you, Jenna?
Yeah, I think, and I've had this struggle myself, but it's something that I mentioned, right? All of my mentors and allies have been men thus far in my career, at least at this stage. And I think it's a natural human instinct to try and find someone that looks like you, behaves like you, etc., and sort of see yourself in that person. And, unfortunately with women, we're not at a place yet where that may make sense. You may not see yourself in a role that you want. It just might not be there, that representation. And that could go for anything, right? It doesn't have to just be women. And if you don't see that representation, that doesn't mean those people can't be allies for you. They can't be mentors for you. And I think that's the biggest miss, is that a lot of people are too uncomfortable with that to make that step and sort of reach out and maybe make that connection, because it isn't someone that looks exactly like us or behaves exactly like us, has the same ideas. And sometimes that's a gap, right? If you don't already have the representation there, we're never going to get there unless someone else is pulling you up, to Marianne's point. And making those connections, I think, is really important. I think that's what a lot of people are missing. So if I could leave you with anything, is don't always look for yourself in your mentor. A lot of times what you're missing may be something that they have. And we should be looking at that a little bit more holistically.
The only thing I'll leave everyone here with is you've earned your spot to be here. Don't let anyone tell you that you haven't. I've been living up in the Northeast, I guess. Gosh, I moved here 2018 in July. It's about to be 7 years. I've earned my spot on this panel. I've earned my spot in this room. I've earned my spot at Cisco. And I'm still getting used to the personalities, but I've earned my spot in the Northeast.
I would say, keep learning, keep pushing yourself, do different things. Something silly I did 3 years ago, just on a whim. It wasn't really a whim. I thought about for a while. I just bought myself a nice set of drums. I always wanted to drum, and I took drum lessons for a year. And it was funny, the drum lesson before me was like a 9-year-old little girl, and the drum lesson behind me was like a 9-year-old little boy. So my teacher would have to move the stool up and down. But it was funny and cool all the same thing. They'd be like, Mommy, is he taking drum lessons too? So, yeah, he's taking drum lessons. So keep learning, keep pushing yourself, do different things, interact with different people, and get outside of this and that device in your pocket.
So thank you very, very much to my panel. I appreciate you giving up your time for me. Thank you for those that came in person. Thank you for those online. June 11th is our next one. Look out for your RSVP and your invite. Guys, thank you very much for having us. Very much. Thank you. Cut. And that's a wrap. That's a wrap.